These sites are the tangible representations of many different cultures.
These are places that caught your imagination as a child.
You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've come from. These sites form part of our cultural DNA.
There are such huge opportunities if you can understand another culture, to walk in another person's shoes.
A building that has been sitting for 2,000 years, you assume it'll be there for another 2,000. That's not the case. Buildings are degrading day by day, just simply by weather, environmental effects like air pollution, and then more catastrophic effects such as vandalism, terrorism.
The Taliban blew up the majestic 160, 180 foot tall Buddhas in the Bamiyan Valley, and nothing was left but rubble. We're losing our heritage sites and the stories that they tell faster than we, the human race, can physically conserve them.
I think we just can't take these sites for granted.
You lose every day, everywhere, heritage sites.
The time is now to do something about it.
Using state-of-the-art technologies, CyArk's mission is to digitally preserve World Heritage Sites.
We're preserving our present and our past so that the future will have the opportunity to look back in time and understand what the world was like.
We utilize a technology known as 3D laser scanning, which generates tens of thousands of points a second.
This technology allows us to bring them to life and tell stories.
Our job is to take that raw data, keep it safe for the future, but then also process it and produce derivatives from it, which can be used by the public and conservators today.
We'll take that data, of course we archive it, but then we disseminate it over the web, and we work with, from local school teachers to develop lesson plans. We work with site interpreters to develop interpretive materials such as virtual tours.
The most poignant days at work was the day that we got a phone call that said that the Kasubi tombs had been destroyed, a suspected act of arson. This was no longer there. So a few days later we got a call and we got an inquiry, is the data available? And do you think we could use this to help reconstruct the tombs? That really brought to home what it is we're doing.
We felt that we needed to accelerate our effort and to challenge ourselves and our partners to an initiative which we call the CyArk 500. We want to bring people together, and through the shared heritage, maybe we can start seeing that we're one human race. Why are we fighting? Why are we not opening our doors? The 500 is a great impetus to get us going and both push the technology and push the sustainability forward. So beyond the 500, this can continue to go and cover as many of the World Heritage Sites as we can.
My name is Elizabeth Lee. I'm the Vice President for the organization. I'd like to welcome you all here this morning on behalf of CyArk and our Board of Directors, and particularly our founders, Ben and Barbara Kasira, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. This event comes at a critical time for cultural heritage, and we appreciate you all making the commitment to be here today. We're delighted to be hosting this event in Berlin. And couldn't be happier to share the stage with the Stiftung Fuschker Kulturbis, the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the caretaker of this beautiful building, Director General of the Staatsbibliothek zu Berlin, Mrs. Barbara Schneider-Kempf.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to Staatsbibliothek zu Berlin, and what's more, to Berlin as a city, which may be the only city in Germany and even in Europe that illustrates what CyArk can do, what it wants to do, and what it is doing. The First World War broke out a good 100 years ago, and the first moving pictures emerged at more or less the same time. And with a mixture of emotion, fascination, and historical interest, we don't just look at the German emperor and his soldiers parading in the foreground. We are far more interested in what has been captured in the background, the facades of old Berlin. 30 years later, as you know, Berlin was in ruins. Huge parts of the city were nothing more than piles of rubble. Everything was rebuilt soon afterwards, like in Gdansk, Danzig, where pre-war streets were more or less duplicated after the Germans had destroyed them. Other places focused on demolition and the supposed modern city of the future, the car-friendly city with private transport. In the past few decades, the western part of the city of Berlin, has lost just as much of its architectural and urban character as it did when it was destroyed during the war. On things, if only they had been able to create a digital copy of the cityscape, we wouldn't have wanted to stop the beginning of the modern age, of course not, but whether for entertainment or research purposes, or simply for a completed objective archival documentation of the past, we would have an image that was true to the original, an image of the fountains and train stations, the courtyards and newspaper stands in this old Berlin. Yesterday's Berlin would be alive. Bringing things to life with digitization is a relatively young idea, but it instantly found its way into cultural discourse. Thankfully, this sort of pursuit has recently been experiencing a renaissance within society as a whole. Only a few months ago, in the spring of 2015, Berlin's Bode Museum had a big exhibition on the Lost Museum, Berlin's collections of sculptures and paintings 70 years after the war ended. This exhibition highlighted the historical circumstances surrounding the museum's fires in 1945 and the fate of its works of art. The major works that had been lost from Berlin's collections of sculptures and paintings were brought back into the public eye with the help of plaster casts and photographic prints in their original size. What we saw was a greatly successful visualization which was true to scale. Staatsbibliothek to Berlin knows what it's talking about too. Its first building was located in one of the wings of the Berlin City Palace, a palace which is now being resurrected as a Humboldt Forum. The rooms in the Royal Library, which were built in the late 16th century, had survived the Second World War. However, they were heavily damaged, and like the entire palace, they were demolished and completely destroyed in 1950. The library's first building can only live on in our memories and in images which are technically quite poor. This was a material available to us until recently. It was clearly nowhere near the quality we have in the digital age. which enables us to archive and store human development digitally. Ladies and gentlemen, CyArk is devoted to the preventive protection of the cultural heritage. Even CyArk can't prevent wars and destruction, but it can at least provide a digital memory so that future generations have a graphic representation of the cultural achievements of bygone times. Berlin, ladies and gentlemen, is the right place to reflect on these sorts of questions and to find answers. Because Berlin, as we say, never is, Berlin is always becoming. Yes, Berlin is constantly changing, and it changes its face at an enormous speed. A little more time to catch our breath might be nice sometimes. But after all, the changes in Berlin happen very much by choice and within a peaceful and pluralist democracy. Elsewhere in the world, cultural artifacts are destroyed in the name of terror, in the name of fanatism and despotism. How much more important is the beneficial work of CyArk there to create and conserve memories? On that note, I would like to wish you all an inspiring and enduring time here in Berlin. And as the Director General of Staatsbibliothek zu Berlin, bid you a very warm welcome. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of the SPK for allowing us to be in this beautiful space and collaborating with us on this event. We're delighted to have so many of you join us. At last count, we had, this is our biggest conference yet, with 250 registrants from 35 different countries, all coming together to discuss and to learn about the ideas of how we can counter the escalating threats to cultural heritage by rethinking preservation and conservation through new technologies. We look forward to meeting you all over the coming days. There's a number of CyArk staff around the building. We've got orange on our tags. So please find us and chat more about our mission and how we can work together. What brings this whole group together today, though, is the 500 Challenge. 2 years ago in London, we announced the CyArk 500 as a challenge to ourselves and our partners and the world to digitally document and archive 500 sites over the course of 5 years. So it's my pleasure to introduce the president of or the chairman of our advisory council, ICOMOS President Gustavo Arroz, to the stage to tell you a little bit more about the 500 and our progress to date. Gustavo.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Ms. Schneider-Kemp, for welcoming us to Berlin, the Berlin that is becoming. That was a very inspiring talk. I was asked by Ben Kassira, who unfortunately, as you know, could not be here, to join us. This is like having the circus without the ringmaster. He must be very sad in California, knowing that he's not with us. But he asked me to chair a talented and knowledgeable group that is the CyArk 500 Advisory Council. And it's composed of heritage experts from around the world. And I'd like to just recognize two of them who are here with us today, David Mitchell and Francesco Banderin. But there are more. We met yesterday to begin to make recommendations on the next sites to be inscribed in the list of the 500. When we were asked by CyArk 2 years ago to serve in this advisory council, our aim was to create a process and an approach that would speak to CyArk's existing work in the field. And of course, this technology plays a major role in the process, and we were struck by how this technology could be applied to face conservation and interpretation challenges and at any particular site, and also to provide working solutions for sites that are at elevated risk. We also wanted to capitalize on CyArk's commitment to transfer methods to the field beyond those experts who are already working within established entities, and into transferring this technology locally to communities in ways that would benefit them permanently. Finally, as a nonprofit charitable organization engaged in this effort, CyArk has been able to promote openness and access to a wide variety of sites, local and internationally significant, while still allowing site owners and authorities to maintain their copyright and to control access to the data for future generations. So that rather than simply developing a list of 500 sites, the members of the councils developed a process and a set of criteria for inclusion of the 500 so that we could evaluate which ones were most meritorious. And we created an application which is inside your conference packs, and I will hope that you will look at them because we're interested in more participations and more candidates to the 500 sites. The response so far, I have to say, has been fantastic. We have received over 200 applications today. And as I mentioned yesterday, we met to consider this new batch of applications. And the Council has approved over 160 applications for inclusion in the 500. The slides playing behind me, they are playing behind me, okay, represent the most recent sites approved for the 500. Of paramount importance was to help the sites most at risk. Following the evaluation of risk, we also look at the role that a site plays in importance to the culture and its community. And finally, we also review the application for the potential benefits that the technology would bring to the site, the regions, including transferring capacity and local skills and technologies to the local communities. The 160 sites approved represent a diverse collection, including ancient dwellings and modern architecture, rock art paintings and carvings from 3 continents, and spiritually significant sites and buildings that represent different religions and belief systems. In addition to the approved sites, we have also completed nearly 20% of the 500. But we do need your help to continue on this process and in advancing and reaching the objectives of the 500. So please take the packet and share it with the people in your community and with the cultural sites in your communities. We have such a diverse crowd here that you can really help us enhance the 500. So we hope to hear from you, and thank you very much.